John Dickie has carved out a terrific career in harness racing. The son of a trainer, he has trained over 600 winners, almost half of those alongside his son Joshua. Today on One on One, we find out a little bit more about this master trainer and what makes him tick. John, you've had a lifetime in the horses. Was that always the case? And your dad was a fairly handy trainer early on?
Yes, Greg, it was. Through my parents, of course, that got me involved, and yeah, hooked at a young age, and never done anything else.
So where'd you grow up?
Well, I was actually born in Taranaki. My parents were in Taranaki, obviously, and then we moved. Dad came from Christchurch, and then he moved back to Christchurch. And I can just remember as a young lad, many years ago in Preppleton, as a 5 and 6 year old, only just.
Yep. Were you intrigued by the horses early on? Were there something about them that you thought, I could do this for life?
Well, funny enough, Greg, when we moved to the Waikato, my dad died when I was 13, and I obviously gave him a hand, as you do after school and the weekends, but I was more interested in playing rugby. And it wasn't until Dad was actually crook that I just helped drive a few work before I went to school, and really got into it after that, to be perfectly honest. But I always, did follow them, of course, yeah.
Spoke to Mark Purdon the other day, and he said his father Roy said that your dad Ivan was a very good horseman. That's a pretty big rap.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that comes from no matter the best, obviously. Because when we moved from Christchurch, actually went to Te Awamutu, sorry. Well, that's Waikato. But Roy was in in Te Awamutu those days, and there was a lot of good horsemen in the Waikato. I think Hurley, he comes from there as well. Arnie Gadsby, and yeah.
You had a few good horses. Inferno won about 10 races, Royalistic half a dozen, Northern Task the same, and Gay Marlene, which has gone on in your life, I suppose. That whole family won half a dozen too. So there were some decent horses around that time.
Yes, and one you didn't mention was a horse called Young Cardigan, that he was a brother to Cardigan Bay, actually. And he'd broken down a couple of times. He was sent to Dad. Dad was quite good at patching horses up, and I think he won the lead up to the the Auckland Cup, which was the Pizarro back those days. And he ran fourth in the Auckland Cup, but he ran fourth to some great winners, Quinn and Arapaho and Rob Allen. I think he ran fourth of those three, actually.
Yeah. What an incredible era that was. What about school for you, Dixie? Were you much of a scholar, or was it more about lunch and the rugby by the sound of it?
Yeah, no, I don't claim to be a professor, Greg. I was no good at school. Played rugby, ate my lunch. And when Dad actually died, I suppose I wasn't ever a bad kid, but I didn't really want to be there. And on my 15th birthday, I just didn't go back. And,
so where did you go to from there?
I left when I was 15, obviously, and I worked for Ian Hunter. Yep. And I moved to Wellington and worked at Ian's at Royden Lodge in Mangaroa. We did 2 years down there before Ian moved to Morrinsville, and I came up with him, and we spent another 3 to 4 years working for Ian. Yeah.
First winning drive. You talk about famous people in the game. C.S. Hunter and Gary Smith. The horse's name? Karinga.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember it vividly?
I do, because I was quite surprised it put me on, really. It was my first, I think it may have been my first race day drive. No, don't think so, no. But it was Charlie's and Brian Mills, and they were respected, as you know. And I think I remember he had trouble going away, but Charlie said if he went away, he'd win, and he did.
There was a bloke, Anthony Grant Hurley, was in the same race as a junior, and he finished fourth, so he's our winningest driver of all time, so I suppose there's a bit of nostalgia there.
Well, I didn't give that a thought, actually, but next time I'm down the local, I'll remind him.
You'll chuck it in. You mentioned Ian Hunter and your association with the mighty trotting mare Thriller D came as a result of that.
Yes. Back when Dad died, Gay Marlene, Mum bred Gay Marlene, and she bred it to Crockett, and she actually had put it through the sales and never got a bid, and so she went into work, and I was working for Ian at the time, and the rest is history, really.
Pretty big thing for a junior to get on a horse of her quality at that stage.
Yeah, definitely. She wasn't the easiest. In fact, I drove her all the trials, and her very first race day start at Cambridge, she was favourite, and she went away slowly, and safely, but then two 30-metre horses went whoosh each side of me, and she took off galloping, and I passed the field. She bolted, and Ian suggested to Mum that put a senior on her because she is, very talented, and which we did, and I did get to drive.
You got a few drives on her after that, but
Correct.
there was a bloke Wolfenden drove her a few times, and so you weren't sitting in the stands for any mugs.
No.
And I think Ian might have driven her a few times himself, and then she ended up with Leonard Robinson, I think,
That's
from
right.
memory.
Ian drove her in all her 3-year-old races, actually, I think, by memory.
Yep.
And then later on, Mum sent her to Len Robinson, who was in the Waikato, and I drove her a few times then, but then Wolfie ended up driving the majority of the time.
She won a New Zealand trotting free-for-all, which you drove her. She beat a couple of handy horses, Sir Castleton and Carl Bryden, and then Carl Bryden came out and won the Dominion. So that must have been an incredible time in your life, driving in those races and your mum involved and all of that sort of thing. That still must put the hairs on the back of your neck.
It does.
Up.
It does, because I went, Cup Day she raced in the Worthy Queen, I think it used to be called the Worthy Queen, and she was unlucky, she ran 5th, and I knew no one in the driver's room.
Yes.
I was 18 or 19, and I knew nobody, and I remember Robert Cameron coming up to me later on after, when I was getting changed, and he said, "You win the Dominion, son," and I was like, Jesus Christ, it's Mr. Cameron's even talking to me, let alone,
Yep.
But she beat Sir Castleton, as you know, in the free-for-all, and he was red hot favourite, and she came off his back and beat him, and she only got done half head in the Dominion.
John Dickie, how do you assess the situation with Trilogy?
Well, she's drawn the second row, and with a bit of luck, she'll get a run through. And she's done real well through the work and eaten very well, and she trained real good on Thursday morning. There's some good horses in the race, of course, but I think if she gets a good run through and on someone's back turning home, she'll be thereabouts.
Is that what got you into the trotters? And when we start talking about some of your own horses, it's predominantly been the trotting gait. Is it the intrigue of them? Is it the challenge? What do you like about them?
Well, I don't know if it is there though, Greg. It's just my dad obviously had trotters. And some people, those days trotters were harder to get going than they are today. So there was a bit of a knack to it and a bit of patience involved. And I think if you had those two, well, you did a good job, So, yeah, I'm not sure why actually.
Your first winner was actually a dead heat. I think the horse's name was Meadow Morn.
That sounds
something like
right,
that.
Yeah.
And one at Hara, dead heated with Guy Adios, and your horse is driven by one S. McCaffrey.
That's dead true. We owned him together. We bought him together as a maiden out of Southland, I think the story was. Yeah, I think there was.
That's right. Morris Skinner had it down south.
Yeah, well, I think Sean did the deal actually, and
Right.
So I'm sure he got it for a few thousand less than what he was probably put on the market for. But no, I do remember that day well, because it's a place we went to every year at Hara, and the celebrations went late into the night, put it that way.
As they should have been.
Yeah.
But auspicious in the fact that it was a dead heat, so you hadn't actually won your own race yet. Your first win was shared, if you like.
That's right, yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your mum and her support, obviously with your father passing, but also in breeding the horses and staying involved. It must have been a huge catalyst to you going out on your own.
Oh, for sure. No, she was a big part for a number of years, Greg, because when Dad died, she had to sell the property. Those days there was death duties, and I wouldn't like to say how much she paid. It was a lot of money.
Yep.
She had to sell the farm and bought 10 acres next door, and then Thriller come along.
Yeah.
And she won 130, 140k back in.
Which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah. And she just got it back on the map, so to speak. And she bred, and we bred out of her, and she raced different other horses. So, and she, until she died, she was with, her heart was with them, even if she wasn't out there in the farm feeding them, So, yeah, big, huge part.
So the early 90s, I think about 92, you trained 17 or 18 winners. Where are you then? Whereabouts are you property-wise?
Okay, I was at the track at Cambridge.
Yep.
Yeah, and I lived down the road. We had property down the road, and we built a house there many years, but later on. But straight from the right off the track.
From the get-go.
From the Cambridge Harness Racing Track. Yep.
All right, you got a Northern Hemisphere time win with a horse called Alpha Leather. It was driven by Todd Mitchell, actually.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a story to that, Greg, because I was actually on vacation in Bali and with Andrew and Lynn Neal and George and his wife at the time, Ellie, and another couple from Southland. And it was the last day of our holiday, and we were on the beach at the bar. And I said to the boys, I've just got to run over the road and listen to this race. And I actually rang home to Mum. Mum was watching it on TV with Joshua.
Yep.
And he turned for home. He was outside the leader. He was outside of the field, and all I could hear was Josh and Mum just yelling, and he won.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. You know,
Yeah.
he paid $30-40.
Yeah.
So I went back to the bar and told them they just couldn't believe it because they made me shout, blah blah blah. But
Yep.
not that I don't shout, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good day. And Todd driving, of course. You know.
Yeah.
So huge.
When we get into, you know, your success and sale series races and the like, it indicates to me you've got a decent sort of eye. So what do you look for at the yearling sales? What's the John Dickie playbook, if you like?
Well, obviously pedigree, Greg, but I didn't have the budget to buy that top echelon anyway. So if I liked them, the look at them, I mean, I was big on parades, then going back and looking at them the next day, or even later on after the parade. That's, if they caught my eye, I'd sort of go back, and if they had pedigree or whatever, blah, 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 and confirmation, I did all that secondary as long. I had to like them first, you know, so. I think it was a horse, Alpha we paid $2 grand for. He was a big, he was quite an ugly horse actually. But he was a Holmes Hanover, and they were the flavour of the month at the time, you know, so, yeah.
So it worked out all right.
Yeah.
Brings us on to, I suppose, the trotter that put you on the map last Sunset. What do you remember of him early on?
Well, I remember a lot about him, Greg, because he was the best one I'd had for a long time. When I say a long time, in my short career at that time, he was the best by far.
Yep.
Yeah, he was leading 2-year-old, not quite as good at 3, but he still was Victorian Trotter of the Year all the same.
Yep.
No, a lot, Greg. He did a lot for me, and at the time, yes, he did.
He won that 2-year-old trot, sale series trot. Tony drove him. He beat Sunning, and yeah, he won the 3-year-old section as well. So a very important time to be bringing in some money because you needed it.
I did. Hence, I went and bought his mother. She went through a sale about a week or two later, and I paid what I consider was big money at the time, $25K in foal, and it's been a breed that's been really good to me, as you know. So Great Getaway's half sister and whatnot. Yep,
he was by Sundown out of Catherine the Great. He ended up winning 18 races, and well, he won a New Zealand trotting free-for-all, beating Mountain Gold, and I think Robbie Holmes drove them. Did
No,
Tony drove them.
Yeah,
Yep.
Tony trained him.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, we, as a 4-year-old, Greg, he kicked off his 4-year-old year. He'd gone through to open class at 3.
Yep.
The next thing he had to race Lowell Creek.
Yes. Yeah, he picked a pretty tough sort of era, if you like, to be racing, because I don't know about you, but I don't know if there's been a better one than Lowell.
No, there has not. And again, he ran a couple of seconds to Lowell in Australia, I think, but it really hurt him a wee bit, and I couldn't, for the life of me, figure him out when he was at one stage of his life. I can't remember how old he was, Greg. And I said to the owner, Mr. Blackwell, I said, I think he needs to change. You know, we've had him on the beach, we've done this, we've done that. And I said, why don't we send him to Mark?
Yep.
To Roy, actually, sorry. It wasn't Mark then, it was Roy. And he was agreeable, and we did, and he went to Roy's when Mark was there, of course. And Mark got him going and took him to the Interminions. He was favourite of the Interminion final. He was handicapped really, really well. The favourite, which was Tim's horse, was handicapped, I can't think, Take a Moment.
Take a Moment.
He was off 20, we were off the front, and we won both heats, but didn't get the final.
Yep.
Then after the final, Mark said, he had a bit of an issue before he left home. He said, I think you should take him to Cassie when you get home, and he had a breathing issue, so for which I did. But to make a long story short, Greg, he never had a breathing issue. He actually had ring bone.
Right.
And so, you know, we didn't know he had ring bone. He never took a lame step, but he sometimes been a cold he sort of didn't put in.
Yeah.
So after that, he was spelled and we treated him. And so Mark had sort of left to go to South Island then by memory, I think. And then,
Right.
But I left him with Tony because he was there, and
Yes.
and then he went on and won the free-for-all, yes.
Yeah. How good was he? At that stage, he was your best horse.
Well, I mean, it's easy to say afterwards. If you ask Mark deep down, what he could trot around their place was just pretty incredible at times.
Right.
He was, in my opinion, one of the best horses I've ever had. Having said that, he had ring bone and we never got the best out of him, so yeah.
Right. Dixie, you were a handy driver yourself. What was your mindset around handing over to the likes of Tony and Todd Mitchell and Robbie Holmes' name will come up a few more times shortly, and obviously Joshua down the track and Zach who drives for you now. What was the catalyst to you perhaps not driving on race day?
Yeah, well, I'd like to think that I'm a realist, Greg, and I knew I love driving. But I just figured it's either going to be driving or training. Where's my income going to come from?
Yep.
And I did drive a horse at Cambridge once for some mates I had, and we used to like to have a bet.
Yep.
And I thought he could win, but I drove it a shocker, and he didn't win. But I didn't only lose the drive, I lost the horse to train. And I thought, well, where's my income going to come from? So I just gave that up, and yeah.
Real Deal Yankee. I remember him winning the Hambo at Ashburton. Todd drove him on that occasion as well. He was another really nice young trotter you had.
Yeah, nice, handy, a very good handy horse, Greg. You know, he went to open class. I think he ran second in the free for all. Nice horse without being a superstar. Yeah, a really nice horse.
Yeah, and you won a sales series with Kathy Gallion as well. I think Maurice McKendry drove it. So again, you were sharing the love with the drivers, weren't you? And you were putting some decent ones on. That bloke Hurley and McKendry, they were pretty much dominating the premierships and had been for a decade.
Yeah, I mean, if you got to strive and have the best on if you can help it, you know. So, yeah.
Let's talk about the golden run with these trotters and Pegasus Spur 2 years in a row, Paramount GG and Flying Isa. You couldn't, well, you did. You got the 2-year-old of the year back-to-back years. It must have seemed like that not everything you touched was gold, but to have them back-to-back, you're on a bit of a roll there, weren't you?
Yeah, we were, yeah, and they were good days. They were very good days, and as you said, you know, they were both 2-year-old trotters of the year, and then when Paramount GG turned 3, he was 3-year-old year, so they were both racing at the same time. They won a couple of Breeders' Crowns the same day, 2 jewels the same day. And we put the tape on every now and again, Greg, and watch them again. So.
Yeah, look, that hasn't been done before. Nobody's won 2 Breeders' Crowns and 2 jewels, and we'll get to those couple at Ashburton shortly, ever. That's never happened, Dixie.
No,
I'm pretty sure it hasn't happened.
Yeah. But I have had 5 Breeders' Crown for 5 starters for 5 winners.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's ever been done before. So.
Well, I'll guarantee you it hasn't been. Certainly hasn't been done by a Kiwi.
Yeah.
The satisfaction of setting a horse for a race in Australia, and clearly you've got to take the right sort of horse and you've got to get the preparation right, and it's all about getting them to drink and all that sort of stuff, but you must have got the formula. Who did you ask about that before you went over there, and who did you learn off?
Well, I'd been to Australia before a couple of times, Greg.
Yeah.
Took old Romper Stomper over a couple of times. He might have gone a couple of times. I think it's common sense. Funny enough, John Noble told me many, many years ago, and this is a long time ago, every time, because he used to campaign a lot in Auckland, and he said to me, when they took horses away from home, he always fed them half the amount of grain they normally get at home the very first night. And he said because you need to get them on their tucker. And that's something I've always done. I've cut their grain back the first night, and they think the next night they think they're at home, and away they go. I don't know. I don't know.
Talk about big names in the game, the Noble name, and his father George is a legend, and JB obviously drove Stanley Rio to a cup and into Dominion as a 4-year-old. So you can glean a lot out of those blokes, can't you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they were terrific horsemen. Terrific. You know, they were just before their time horsemen back then. Yeah.
Yep. You talked about Romper Stomper. Now, I'm sure Robbie drove that to win the free-for-all, and of course he got associated with both Paramount GG and Flying Isa and won those 2 on Jules Day. The Jules concept was very good to you, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah, it was. I mean, we had disappointments too, don't worry about that. But that day at Ashburton, 2 for 2 was pretty special. And Robbie has been a family friend for many a year. His dad Colin trained just down the road from us and when Kevin was alive, and we've known. We went to school with them. My sister went to school with Robbie's sister Carla, and it was they were magic. And Robbie Robbie's a terrific horseman, still is today.
Yep. Well, he's bred to be good, wasn't he? We talk about big names in the games. The Holmes name's right up there.
Holmes' name is up with the nobles and whatnot, yeah, as you know.
The Purdons,
so,
absolutely. Robbie, your relationship with John Dickie goes back a long way.
Does indeed, Greg. Yeah, it goes way back to the Cambridge days where we were all young lads and enjoying rugby racing and beer and motto throw and nightclubbing as well.
Yeah, well, what about this ability of his to train a horse? Explain to me why he's had the success that he has had.
To be fair, John's a freak with young trotters, to be honest. He, in my way looking back, he actually is, he's such a good educator, and he's used the American style of what they call heat work, which is where they'll take a horse out, do a trip for a mile, 20th a furlong, something like that, mile and 240, and then they'll come back out and leave him for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then they'll go back out and do another trip. And it just builds up muscle, and it builds up attitude, to be fair. And yeah, John was really big on this, and yeah, it's something that's certainly assisted him in his career.
You've had great success. You won a trotting free-for-all with Romper Stomper at long odds.
We did.
Tell me about that result. That was pretty big.
It was, yeah. John Dickie and Phil Shirley, they both had partnership with the horse, and John sent him down because he's a wee bit unsound. So we just trained him on the beach, and I tried something different. I just worked him in the surf, out in the actual water, not up above the tide line, and he loved it. So we just continued to do that, and yeah, he progressed all the way through, and we started getting results, and then we lined him up in the free-for-all and fall back the fence one stage. I thought we haven't got much show, but we hopped off around the bend and had some luck and got home.
The young trotters, you talked about that and the success you had initially with Paramount Gigi, who I think you won the first 5 on, and obviously he won a Breeders' Crown, and then along came Flying Isa. But let's start with Paramount Gigi, and you got both derbies with him as well. You must have been on the crest of a wave, you two, because those two horses just kept lining up and winning.
They were, you're dead right, Greg. They were like freaks, to be honest. They were both those dominant in their 2-year-old career and dominant in their 3-year-old career as well. And but their manners saw them through. That's what it was. They would get off the gate nicely. They had gate speed, and you could position them where you wanted them. And there was one occasion where Paramount Gigi in the Jewels at Ashburton, he wasn't steering all that good going into the race, and we had to. I opted to come out and get round a couple, and as we straightened up, he was that hard on one line. I had to take some cover again and hope like hell that he would straighten up when we come up for the run home. Otherwise, we weren't going to find the line, and that he did. Yeah.
Look, he ran 5th in that, and then you went to Australia and he won the first of 2 Breeders' Crown. Was that the most special of them? Obviously, you got 2 in one day, and we'll get to that in a moment, but to have success in Australia with a mate of yours on a horse that you had so much admiration for, that must be right up there.
Definitely, yeah. Well, John, it wasn't so bad for me, but John, he was pulling his hair out 2 days prior because the horse tied up something chronic. And without a word of a lie, John walked that horse for probably half a day. And that's what got him over the tie-up situation. And to get credit on the day, yeah, it was a big effort from John.
To have dual success, a massive day for you, Pierre, and then to do it again in the Breeders' Crown. Talk me through that time in your life and the enjoyment you guys took out of that, because that's bloody hard to do.
It is indeed, yeah. As we all know, you're only as good as the stock you train, but as I've mentioned, John, he was someone who could find the best get the best out of that stock. And yeah, it was we were on a crest of a wave, to be honest. It was like, wow, this is easy. But as we all know, it's not, because the issues come along and a lot of people don't see what goes on behind the scenes. And believe me, with those horses, they both wore what I find is a perfect shoe for a trotter, which is a flip-flop. It's basically it's a nice weight with a soft sole, and it's more a therapeutic shoe, but it was back, I think Jeff Small might have been the first one that actually started racing in them with his paces, and then, yeah, but then John opted on it, and it worked out really well for them.
It's been an incredible part of your career, has it not? Your association with him and those trotters?
Definitely, yeah. No, it certainly has helped us on our way. We've sort of picked up the odd trotter with being out on the beach as well since then, and it's no, it's been massive.
Have you got a favourite track, Dixie? Is there one track that you like going to? And obviously, if you've had success there, it helps. But yeah, do you have a favourite track?
Melton's my favourite track because I've had a lot of success there,
Yep.
and it is nice going over there. Funny enough, Ashburton's been good to me. You know, I've won a few races at Ashburton, but no, now it's Auckland. You know, it's been my home for 10 years now.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I love competing in Australia and winning in Australia.
Dixie, you mentioned Great Getaway before, and she was a pretty handy trotting mare herself. She won about 10 races, including a Northern Breeders. What type of horse was she?
Well, again, she was a lovely mare, Greg. A bit below the top ones. You know, she raced in a Road Cup and Dominion Grand Final. But again, just a tier below the good ones, but lovely mare all the same, yeah.
I think she had 5 foals. Well, she's had 5 foals. She's actually had another one now, which is by Speeding Spur, which we'll touch on shortly. But they've all won, and they've all been pretty smart. And Tricky Rick was a really smart 3-year-old, went round on the derbies and those types of races, the Big Bird. That's what we do, and they're all associated with a great mate of yours, the late Richard Bright.
Yeah.
She's been an awesome broodmare, hasn't she?
She has. She's been terrific, Greg. And of course, she's a half sister of Last Sunset. And now, as I say, she hasn't left. I think she will leave it nice. And that's what we do. He's had a few issues, Greg, we've had to address, and I think he can sort of line up in a Group 1 down the track. But she's been a great breeder so far. Yeah.
Unfortunately, tragedy struck when you lost your mate Richard Bright, who was more than an owner. You guys actually shared in the ownership of the clubhouse at Cambridge, and of course he owned the Group 1 turf bar. A terrific character and a man who just loved racing horses, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and yeah, it was so sad, Greg. Yeah, we were at the pub one night and talking about the breed, and Catherine the Great was actually in Christchurch at the time, and not Brent Taylor, but I can't think now, Sam's dad.
Yep.
He had the mare because she couldn't get in foal, so he was just doing embryos. And he missed her the first 2 years, and I said, oh, we might pay to retire her. And he said, no, I said, I can get one for you. So he said, if I get an embryo for you, can I have one the next year? Which he did. So the embryo we got was Real Deal Yankee, and then he got a filly, which we wanted. So down the pub this particular night, said to mention to Richard, and he said, ring him up. Offer him 30 grand for that thing. And anyway, which Richard did, and he sold it, and there was history. Me and Richard raced Great Getaway. Yeah.
Amazing. And it's funny how things, turn out. And now that he's passed away after the boating tragedy, Brenda's racing the horses, which I'm sure he would have wanted to happen.
Yes, he did. And we've had quite a few conversations with Brenda about it, and she's just happy to race them with me. So personal friend from way back.
Yeah, the last foal out of her, unfortunately, foaling, she died, is by Speeding Spur. So almost all the stars have aligned there, and it's a filly.
It's a filly, yeah.
Called Sparkle. She's
called Sparkle, and Paulette Screen named her Sparkle because she was, obviously the mare died when she was foaling, so she was prem a wee bit, couple of days prem, so she looked after her, and they just called her Sparkle. So I thought it was fitting if Paulette called her Sparkle, we'll call her Sparkle.
Yep. Your son Joshua, tell me about his involvement in the horses, and was he like you? Was it always going to be the way?
Yeah, unfortunately he was just like me, Greg.
Unfortunately.
Yep. He went to Cambridge High, and along with Davey Carr's young boy Kieran, actually, and those days you had to get credits to pass.
Yep.
They were getting credits for picking up rubbish, so it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
So he spent the last 6 months working for me till there was a gap at Tony's, actually.
Yep.
And I think it was 2 months before his 16th birthday he worked for Tony. But yeah, no, it was in the blood, and unfortunately he came up with Trackside TV. So when he was a young fella, he was just watching TV when we were watching TV. And Josh, tell me about growing up. What was it like having
John Dickie as your dad?
Oh, it was pretty cool, mate. As a young fella, I spent a lot of time with Dad down the stables with him. Back then, Dad trained at Cambridge at the track there, and had a real nice barn there. I think Dad always only had 15 to 20 horses and that sort of thing. But a lot of days after school were spent there, and a lot of days around lunchtime on a Thursday or Friday, Dad would pick me up and take me out of school to go to the races with him at all. There was a lot of great memories at that barn. Dad had a lot of great people who worked for him over the years. Probably too many to name. But there was a lot of good times at that barn, especially as a kid. Dad used to hook up some leads to his work carts, and I used to sit in there and have a with the whip and throw the leads around like I was Tony Hurley. And no, they were great days, mate.
Yep. He mentioned about school and you were better off getting into the workforce. Was that fair?
Yeah, pretty fair. In the mornings I was at the stables, and school holidays, weekends, it was always at the stables. I wasn't going that good at school. I was having a couple of fallouts with teachers, as you do when you're not really that happy to be there. I was really only there for friends and lunchtime and PE. That was my only subject that I liked. And there would come to a point there where Dad give me the option, say, look, you're wasting your time at school. You're not really paying attention. If you want to get into it, you got to get into it now and work hard. And he wasn't. He told me that if you're going to do it, you got to do it properly. Don't think you're coming out of school just to work for me, because it'd be too easy. So he made sure that we organised a good job for me to go to. But it took Dad probably 6 or 8 months to break it to my mum that I'd left school. And he'd always say, "Oh, we'll tell her when the time's right." And it wasn't until we got a phone call from Tony Hurley that we jacked up the job to go there, that they were a bit short-staffed and they needed me pretty quick. And all of a sudden I had to be there in 2 weeks. And Dad dropped me off at Mum's there one afternoon and said, "Oh, he's going to spend 10 days with you. He's got to go to work on it in 2 weeks." So sorry about that, but Mum and Dad always got on really good, and she always knew that that was my destiny.
Joshy, describe your dad as a horseman to me.
Dad's a great horseman. He's got a lot of strings to his bow, not just as a trainer, but as a horseman. I always found it interesting, how clever he was with horses' feet, especially trotters. There's a real art to training trotters, and, different things with angles and, how horses need to be shot up. And Dad's always had a lot of patience too. I still remember when we were training together, there was a little horse there. I can't remember its name, but I think I drove it first time, and it bloody near galloped every furlong, and Dad hopped on it, and I think the next time he drove it, it might only gallop 12 times, and then 8 times, and 6 times, and he could always see there was something there for the horse and different things that he could do to it, and in the end of it, it was fine. It was good as gold. You could drive it with your eyes closed. Just things like that. He'd great knack for getting young trotters going. But I know that he's always he gets a good rap for the trotters, but he's just as good with the paces. He just probably hasn't had many cup paces, but it's all about the stock that you get, and he's done marvelous jobs with a lot of paces over the years, and it's great to see now that he can perform at the top level with the pacer with Old Town Road. He certainly proved that.
Yep, absolutely he has. He got close to qualifying one Socket to me back in the 80s, and I remember you telling me once how he was so close to getting a cup runner and what it would have meant to have a runner in the cup. Last year, you got to share that with your dad and the Calders. How special?
Yeah, that was really special because it was actually in the '90s because I was a kid then, only a kid, and Socket Toomey was he was Dad's best mate. That horse. Spent a lot of time with him at the stables when he got crook there one year, and you know, I do remember that vividly. That he'd all but got into the race, um, and then a few years went by, and he had another good one called Innocent Bystander.
Yep.
He raced in an Auckland Cup, and he was probably the closest he got after that. And when Old Town Road come along, I think what did he win? Maybe 5 of his first 6 starts, and all of a sudden he's looking down the barrel of a cup campaign, and it happened really fast. But obviously, with us being here, we couldn't miss that opportunity. Anything can happen in this game, and you might only get one shot at it. And so we said to Sammy, we can't miss this opportunity, and it was a big day for Dad. But to share it with Ben Calder, Ben and Karen have supported Dad for, I'm going to say, 25 years, just through an association of Kevin Townley. Kevin and Dad are still good friends to this day. Good clients, and very loyal clients, to both Dad and I, Ben and Karen. So, it was a special day.
Obviously, it's fair to say, Joshy, with the 240 odd wins you had, the first one very special with He's a Do early, but your dad's clearly shaped your career, and he said you're a better driver than he was, but he reckons he played rugby better than you, so he was going to call that square. What do you make of that?
Yeah, he's probably right there. He was a good footy player. I think Dad played Wellington under 18s or something, but I think he'll tell you when he first sampled DB draft, he went right through the back line, went from a halfback to a winger, I think he told me. I wasn't much chop with the rugby. I loved the rugby, but believe it or not, I was very, very small when I was playing rugby as a kid. I played in a weight division of under 50 or 45 kilos. I played first 5 in the high school team, and the halfback was James McDonald. So that gives you an example of how small I was back then.
Right.
And it's just the way rugby is today. There's there's some big kids out there, and I got a couple of knocks and knocks your confidence and that. But I love my rugby. I really do. I wish I could have played it better, but Dad can have that one.
Yeah, nice. Hey, great to catch up, Joshy, and it's also great to reflect on your dad's career. Now you're in Australia, that record of 5 from 5 in the Breeders' Crown, that hasn't been done before, and it's going to be blimmin' hard to match.
Yeah, well, it is, and he does remind me that he's 5 from 5, and I think I'm 1 for 3. I think so. Yeah, but he's going to have to. He's going to have to bring out his record again. He's got some nice young horses, so he's going to have to try and bring one back for the Breeders' Crown and see if he can make it 6 from 6. But he's had some wonderful horses over the years that he's been able to bring over here, and with plenty of confidence. And the horses that he's won the Breeders' Crown with, they haven't just won; they've won with plenty of dominance.
Yep. The one special horse you shared together, Speeding Spur, so many great moments. The Great Southern Star stands out for him. What about for you?
Yeah, I think that does. That win, that'd be hard to do again. I think for a 4-year-old to do what he did, parked outside the leader in a 52 or 3 mile in the heat, and he comes out and wins the final. And that was a bit of a that time was him and Monbay's time to sort of duel out, I suppose, and unfortunately they both went amiss. Not long after that, he broke down. Speeding Spur come home and broke down not long after that. So yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow. But the Rowe Cup probably will always mean a lot. That's one race Dad always said over the years that he wanted to win. He's always loved the North and South Island rivalry of the Cantabs and the boys from up north, and he said, the Dominion's always a big race, but the Rowe Cup's bigger in my mind. So, to win that was a huge thrill. To win that for Dad, that was huge.
you said he worked for Tony and obviously learnt a lot there. When it came the chance for you guys to join up in partnership, and you nearly trained 250 winners together, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, he came out of his time at Tony's. I think it was Tony's nearly 7 years, Greg.
Yep.
And he got the offer from Mr. Kerry Hogarth at the time. And Kerry was happy to go in with Joshua, but he wanted me to come up with him and do a partnership together because he was a little bit young to take off straight away.
So this is at the property we're at now?
Hence we're at now, yeah.
Yep.
So I'm still here and
Joshua's moved on.
yeah, yeah.
What about your first winner? He's a due early. That would have been a proud day, given your family heritage with your dad and your mum, and then the next generation coming through and winning with you. That must have been pretty cool.
It was cool because I wouldn't say he was the nicest gated trotter we've ever trained, but he came from Phil Williamson's actually, and Joshua and Maddie have been mates for years, and they used to have bets all the time. Maddie bet him he'd never win a race, so so when he won one, he bet him another 100 that he wouldn't win another one. Well, he ended up winning another 5, I think. So yeah.
No, that sounds like a Maddie Williamson story for absolutely sure. I was looking through some of your history there, and you trained Lively Knights, which is the mother of Copy That, who won half a dozen or 7 races too. So
yeah, she did.
Yeah. She's left a reasonable one, Dixie.
She has. Yeah, it would have been nice. Yeah, Mr. Blackwell, he's not into breeding, so he was at least a wooden stud, and I didn't even go to look at him actually. She actually brushed her knee, Lively Nights, and I wish I had have. Yeah,
he's ended up being a superstar, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
Yeah, neat wee horse. In any partnership or any early days of training horses, you're looking for a star, and you boys found one in Speeding Spur. Del Boy. Yeah,
Del Boy. He was. We just moved up here, Greg, the first year, and Andrew Gresson to office the horses a yearling, and we had no idea what we had. He was a big sloppy colt, and he wasn't the best gated trotter, but he just kept improving, as you know, and he done us proud.
Yeah, he got beaten in his first start by You're Gonna Kiss Me or Not, but his second start, we all should have known then, and looking back at the video, he stretched his neck like he did in so many of those races, and he was just a winner. He just wanted to win.
Yeah, he did. He did, Greg, but I didn't think then that he would be what he did. He went down south after that, and I think he got third and a couple of thirds, and he was just a 2-year-old.
Yep.
But when he raced in the Jewels at 2, we give him sort of 2 or 3 weeks off, freshen him up for the Jewels at home at Cambridge, and Greg's good trotter was on the Mombay, and he drew handy, and he was like odds-on favourite. We drew the outside of the gate, went back to last, and so Josh was sitting last at the 800, and then he just got this gap and went right through the field. He ended up in the 1-1, and he was bolting, and he actually got checked, and he got the second one actually got disqualified.
Yep.
But I thought to myself, that horse has improved. You know what I mean? He'd come up back from Christchurch, freshened up, and we would never have beaten Mombay.
No.
But man, he was going to run second.
Yep.
And I thought, maybe next year. And
maybe next year came, mate. He won both derbies and beat Mombay in both of them.
Yes, he did, and albeit one of them we just held on. But again, it's first past the post, isn't it? So.
Does one derby not excite you more, but was more satisfying than the other? Winning a derby at Addington must have been pretty special.
Yeah, it certainly was, Greg, and I'll never forget that night. It's the home of trotting. It is the home of trotting, bar none, and it was probably my biggest, apart from driving Thriller as an early age, my biggest success at down south, yes.
Gee, you had some auspicious owners in the horse, the Woodlands Partnership, and Dick Taylor, who's famously won at the Commonwealth Games in Christchurch, and a few All Blacks in there, including the captain at the time, Kieran Reid.
Yeah, we didn't see too much of the All Black boys, but Dick Taylor, we did a lot.
Yes.
Got to know Dick, as many people do.
Champion bloke.
Loveliest guy you ever want to meet, and they always enjoyed the horse, even when he got beat. That was the biggest thing about Speeding Spur. Every time we got beat, they were still the same. You'd think they'd won, and that's the biggest thing, in my opinion.
What was his biggest win, or what was most satisfying? Because he got a Rowe Cup, but he won a Great Southern Star. And that's hard to do. You've got to run in a heat, run in the final, have your horse peaking, all of that sort of stuff. Which one stood out? Is that it?
Yes, I think so. Even the Royal Cup was like a big night for us, but it stuck out for the reason that I'll never forget it, because we weren't favourite. Keystone Dell was favourite by memory. And in the heat, we drew the outside in the heat, and he drew 2. He led. Josh, he was parked the whole way and got beat. He got beat on his merits, got beat half a length, 3/4 of a length, but yeah, good run. And then in the final, on the same night, well, funny enough, we looked over and all that the Lily camp, they're all, you know, and as you should be, you know, pretty bullish of themselves, you know, because he won. And we got beaten. We were happy, but, you know, winning's everything. Mm-hmm. And then we won the final on the same night, and then we were jubilant and they were the other way, if you know what I mean. And it was funny night, but he got the run. He won the second row. Kevin, what's the name, he used to work for Woodlands, he drew his number out of the hat.
The number out, yep.
And it was won the second row. We were horrified, but what do you do? And he got a good run through, got out the top of the lane, and yeah, he was too good on the night.
Down the outside, Glenfrey Typhoon, Speeding Spur got out. Speeding Spur's challenging, and Speeding Spur, what a win. Speeding Spur's won it from Glenfrey Typhoon, quite a moment.
He's really developed as a driver, Joshy, and I know you're his dad, so it's easy for me to say that, and you're just going to agree with me, but what do you think makes Josh the driver that he is? Because he doesn't seem to get phased.
No, he does. He never did, Greg. That's the biggest thing. He's patient. He can be the other way too. You can put him in the race if need be, you know. So, yeah, and it's just, it comes down to, I can honestly say Joshua played rugby. He tried real hard, but he was never going to go far. Right. I played rugby. I never can get any past senior rugby, but I was a bit better rugby player than he was. But he was a better driver. He's
a better driver. Yeah, okay. He ran second in an Inter-Dominion final too, didn't he? Tornado Valley, I think, beat him. So yeah, he was an incredible horse, Speeding Spur, and one that I know, you know, you're always going to have great memories and fond memories of. Yeah,
because he bled in Melbourne, Greg, and he was never the same after that.
He won a good race at Tiago Downs, didn't he? Because he travelled the world. It wasn't just Australasia.
Yeah, and that's hence why Andrew sent him there, and he could race on Lasix over there. He did win a big race and beat some really nice horses, actually. Yeah.
Yep. And now he's at stud, and clearly you've bred one to him as well. It's always very hard to predict how well he's going to go at stud, but if they try as hard as he does, then you're halfway there.
Yeah. Well, this little filly tries all right at the moment. She tries too hard to try to keep the back leg from coming outside the car sometimes, but yeah, no. I'm sure you'll have a good one because he was a tough horse.
Plenty of other bread and butter horses, and a horse that frustrated you a lot, I know, was Sartorius, a big horse that probably should have won more races than he did.
Yeah, he had sort of knee issues, Greg, and they sort of got to his brain a wee bit, and sometimes didn't put it in sometimes, but he was a good horse, yes, he was.
Yep. Joshua's now domiciled in Melbourne with his partner, Sammy Kilgour. That changed things for you, and I know that you and Linda were looking to scale back in some regards, and let's talk about Linda a wee bit and her involvement in the business, and of course her son Lewis is a handy jockey in Australia and Melbourne as well. Her horse knowledge, I know you rate very highly, and she's a big part of this operation.
Yes, she is, Greg, and well, she used to ride many years ago, Linda, before she got, I think she got married or waited, she was one of the two, but yeah, no, she's worked in stables most of her life. She worked for Alan Jones, and so she was mentored by Alan, the great Alan Jones, and yeah, so her horsemanship's just, you know, second to none around the stables anyway. Makes me look second rate sometimes. She's a bit more particular than I am, but it works out good. Yeah, really pleasing.
All right, so you're looking to scale back, and I know I've said this to you before, but very much like R.F. Mitchell, when he got just an excuse, along comes Old Town Road.
Yeah.
Where did he come from?
Well, he was a sleeper. Honest to God, Greg, he was a sleeper. I had decided to say to Josh, put him in your name, and I'm just going to take a back seat, and I was hoping to load up a team and go down to the coast, down south, which I've never ever done, still haven't done, and things like that.
He's a bit good for that, was he?
Yes, he was, but what I'm saying, I was going to do that. Then, obviously, Josh made the decision to go to Melbourne, and we're all going to try Old Town Road again. He'd had issues with a back leg we couldn't find the problem with, And then we were at the Spelling Farm one day and saw this massive blowout. Tried him again, and the rest is history. Yeah, so.
Gee, he made an impression, and he raced through the grades. He's very, very quick when he gets the right sort of run, and he made his way into the New Zealand Cup with the least number of starts of any horse in the 120-year history of the race. At start number 13. He got there quickly, didn't he?
He did, Greg, and that's the handicap him anyway. Having said that, he
was exceptional.
Yeah, and it was the only place you could race anyway, really. He had to race that great horse. But yeah, I'm not sure, because it's later on in the season we were very disappointed in him. And I just wonder if it may have caught up with him. We're not sure. And sometimes in that, it's like probably playing footy, that your first year in that big go, pretty hard, and then the next season you get a bit more acclimatised to it. Well, I'm hoping that's the case, Greg, because it's a tough grade, and if you've got any little issue and you're not quite right, you certainly get found out.
Had you had a starter in the Cup before?
No, I have not.
No.
No.
So that was that was your first ever runner, and he performed with great credit, didn't he?
Did.
Finished 5th. Then he went a great race in the free-for-all.
Yes, he did. Yeah, no, he raced really, really good, and a bit before our expectations, to be quite honest, Greg. It just didn't finish off the season quite as good.
But you took him to Australia after that, didn't you?
Oh, yes,
was that about, I suppose, toughening him up mentally as much as anything?
Yeah, a bit of both. And there was a lull between the Cup time and then the Grins race. So we thought we'd take him over there, and he had a couple of runs there, and he raced terrific.
Though.
Oh, he went really
terrific.
good.
Yeah.
He drew the outside in the Ballarat Cup. He drew the outside of the second row in the Hunter Cup.
Yeah.
But he went super. Yeah.
Came back and he finished second in the race by Grins, but he was almost 90%, wasn't he? Well, you felt that anyway.
Well, I was never going to beat Racehorse. I mean, he led and nothing would have beaten him in that night. I really honestly felt we should have given him a run for his money. He had an economical run. He's beat us 2 lengths, and there might have been a couple of lengths back to the third, but all the same, you just know your own horse. And everyone said, even Josh said, no, he went good, Dad. I said, I know he went good, Josh. But I think
you know your horse.
Yes, yeah. And I think I turned out to be right, because it was the Auckland Cup, he wasn't right, and he hung, and he's never done that before in his life, Greg. So, but he's had a good 8-week spell now, so yeah, touch wood, and see how we go.
Joshua's not here, but he's in the ownership, along with the Calders, who have been long time associated with you. How cool to have this type of horse for them.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Ben and Karen. As I say, they terrific people. Terrific losers. I always say that again, because they've had a lot of winners over the years, but great, can accept defeat. Some people can't. They've just been terrific, and I'm just hoping that we can win a big one for them both. I really do, yeah. Zachary drives, and that must give you great confidence, because he's a rare talent, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah, no, Zach's he hasn't driven a bad race on him, and we both know. I'm sure the New Zealand public haven't seen the best of him. I'm just fingers crossed that we can get him back together and they can show the best old John.
Can he win a big one? Can he win the biggest race of them all?
Yes, he can. I honestly believe that, even though the calibre horses you're racing against and the calibre trainers, obviously Mark and Nat, I honestly think that he was perfect going into the New Zealand Cup. There was no excuses in those. But if they had seen the right horse come Grins time in Auckland Cup, he could have been more competitive here.
You've had some great owners over the years, some of whom without you wouldn't be here.
Yes, correct, Greg. And I must say, what do you call it, a cheerio to Basil and Gail Blackwell from Te Awamutu. When I was training in Cambridge, Basil was a son of the late Charlie Blackwell, raced a lot of good horses, Charlie, and he's been terrific for myself. Raced a lot of horses. Last sunset he was in a sheep with Paraman Gigi and the light, but it was the other ones that didn't. Some of them didn't get to the races, Greg, that we had. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Basil, because we wouldn't have had the opportunity to be offered the job if we hadn't done a good job down there. And it was a lot to do with Basil. So I thank Basil and Gail. Couldn't help them.
Loyal,
thank them enough. Yes.
Very loyal.
And Basil's brother Derek, Todd trains for Derek, and just on another note, I mean, Todd, I worked for Robert for a stint before I went to America, and Todd was a young fella, and he drove a lot of winners for me, Todd. Going back to that winner we said before, that I think there might have been Todd's first stakes winner.
Yep.
But that'd be nothing to what he's done since, you know. So, but yeah, it was good to be part of that as well. Yeah.
All right, what about the future? You got a galloper floating around here I saw before by Embellish, so Linda's influenced you there, I suppose, with the thoroughbred. What do you guys want to happen in the next 3 to 4 years? Clearly, hopefully Old Town Road will do what you think he can do.
Yeah. Well, I was like, the intention was just to leave it up Greg, and then when Josh and Sammy moved to Melbourne, and then I said, Linda, we've got to give it another 12, 18 months. We had some yearlings here from some clients that have been good clients. I said, we just can't walk away. We need to run their course out, and then obviously Old Town Road come along. So hence we were just going to race. We're going to race Alan's his name, Old Town Road. We call him Alan. We're going to race Alan till such time as he's not around, and then we'll race a few more gallopers after that. I would have had a couple more gallopers in work now if it wasn't for Alan.
Yeah, right. Life's been good, Dixie. Is there anything you'd change, mate? You've trained over 600 winners. I mean, it's been a good lifestyle.
Yeah, no, it has. Yeah, it has, and you meet a lot of people over there, you know. So, yeah, I don't think I'd change anything, Greg. You know, just a few more racehorses in New Zealand on a whole would be nice, you know. But you can't do you can only do what you can do, can you? You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Life's been good.
Yep, it's been good. Yeah.